You've mentioned it in terms of your Hadrian's Wall run. You've mentioned it in a few times. What is your relationship and your views on expertise and utilizing expertise? So you've talked in terms of like training, preparation, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. What's your thoughts on that?
As in professionals getting help, do you mean? Yeah. We can't all be experts at everything. And there are definite experts in those fields. Like, I think we'll probably come on to my next challenge, but there's no way I'm going to be able to do that on my own. And so I've got help. So last year I got help from a functional health specialist, and he has been amazing. And really, I got in contact with him because I wanted to know, was I taking the right supplements, or was I taking enough of the right supplements, or, you know, what supplements and where should I get them? It's such a minefield. And that has been a great learning experience. Nutritionists, so with the diabetes, I have a couple of really good nutritionists that I talk to regularly, and depending on, you know, what goals I've got coming up, you know, they kind of help me in regards to that. I'm going to have to take on a trainer of some description or coach for this, what's going on next year. We're all experts in different fields, and I fully appreciate that. I don't know enough about, you know, helping myself, and that's why I really enjoy the learning as well. And so, you know, I put a lot of education on social media for my patients and followers, and some of it's really boring, some of it I hope, like, you know, plants a seed in someone's head. I don't pretend to know it all, but if I can just start a conversation about some of it, then, you know, if someone doesn't know where to start, I can put them in the right direction. So sorry, I just put the chiropractic hat back on. But I'm a big believer that we all need help from the different experts in the different fields. We can't do it all ourselves.
Welcome to what I think is going to be a very unique, novel, entertaining, inspiring, jaw-dropping, and possibly the word batshit crazy might come up 2 or 3 times tonight. And tonight is going to be very different for 2 reasons. One, because our guest tonight is a multi-talented, multi-faceted woman who does things on top of working full-time and being a mum to 2 dogs that most people think is impossible. And, which is even more crazy, it is the first time that I've connected with Charlotte for 30 years. And I know you're watching this now and going, there is no way it has been 30 years because Charlotte only looks 25, which I don't know what says about me. But it's true. Charlotte and I used to go to primary school together. She was one of my sister's best mates at school. And we went to school and left when you were 11 and I was 13. So it has been just shy of 30 years since you and I have spoken. How old do you feel now?
Oh my gosh, that's a shocker. Wasn't prepared for that one. A lot of kind words there. Thank you, Mark. But 30 years, yeah, that makes you feel very old.
We just give up now. So we just press end recording and everyone can just go and laugh and cry at the pain that we're feeling. But I am so grateful to chat to you. For those of you who are part of the We Get Outdoors crew, you will see some cool stuff that Charlotte posts in there. And I'm going to start on one thing that really, to be honest, you actually pissed me off. I'm going to be blatantly honest, because it was such a cool thing that you did. And it's something that I hadn't thought about. And then I really wanted to do, and now I've just been told I can't run. So actually, you and I are having a second fallout. Not only that you haven't spoken to me for 30 years, but now you're just pissing me off. So you decided in your wisdom to run across England and follow a very famous wall, which for those who are really bad at geography, it's not the Great Wall of China. It is Hadrian's Wall. So firstly, do you want to just tell the audience a little bit about this run and what is so important about Hadrian's Wall? And then we'll go into why you did it, what happened, what you learned, what was fun, what wasn't fun.
Okay, so geography is not one of my top skills either, and the history element of geography definitely isn't either. But so originally, I wanted to do the West Highland Way, which is a course up in Scotland and all up in the Highlands, and it's really beautiful. But I was aiming to do something in November. I was trying to capitalize on the London Marathon, which is in October. And it had to be then. So there weren't any accommodation options open along the West Highland route in November, probably for good reason, in the fact that it's the depths of winter and not much is going on, and it's probably not very safe. So then I looked at Hadrian's Wall, and it's just an area that I'd never spent any time. And I thought, what a great way to see rural England at what is probably its finest. So Hadrian's Wall crosses east to west or west to east, however you look at it, and pretty much borders Scotland from England. It goes back, God, please don't quote me on any of this, but well into the
Charlotte, we're recording this. This is recorded. And quoting's not is the least one of your problems.
So it goes back an awful long time, back to Roman times, and parts of the wall are still standing. Obviously, not all of it. So there's a huge historical element to when you're crossing it. Lots of kind of Roman artifacts, and there's museums on route and things like that. It's just in the rural depths of England, and the most stunning countryside I think I've ever experienced. So I thought, what a great idea. Let's go and see it. And but I had like a weekend to spare. I wanted to do a bit of running, and thought, let's cross it as quickly as possible. So basically did it in 3 days. It was 88 miles, but it was put together. So it wasn't a race, but the holiday, in inverted commas, was put together by a really fabulous company. So they booked the B&Bs en route. They moved our overnight bags for us via taxi to the next place whilst I spent the day running with just a day sack. So it was brilliant. Didn't have to take everything with us. Didn't have to stay in a tent. Did it that way, middle of November last year. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Cool.
Yeah,
it does. And the cool thing about Hadrian's Wall is it was built to keep the Scots out of England. So unfortunately, it didn't really work because the Scots kept invading England, but it was a nice idea. I love how the fact that you just chuck it in that you had a weekend spare, because it's not as if you run full-time or professionally. It is something that you fit in around. But again, I think I love the sense of adventure. It's like, I've got a weekend spare. What should I do? It's somewhere that I've always wanted to go and visit, and let's kill two birds with one stone. So 88 miles, it's not like an insurmountable do. It's quite a significant amount of miles to put in your legs. And the terrain, obviously, it's trail, quite a lot of trail, I'm assuming, as well, which is, what do they say? Trail is 1.6 times a road mile.
Is that true? Yeah, it certainly feels like that. Yeah.
So there you go. Mm-hmm. So where did this love from beasting yourself, killing yourself come from?
That's a really good question. So this is something that I have, it's grown year on year. So at school, I was always a lover of sports, all the team sports, loved all that. In my early 20s, I got quite heavily involved in triathlons. And that's where I first discovered that when you put discipline into your training, you reap the rewards. I've always been a very competitive person. But that competitiveness has now turned into competitiveness against myself. So I've now got this thing that I absolutely love a challenge. I love challenging myself. I find out more and more about myself each time I get to that point, or each time I get to a challenge. And it's almost like a voyage of discovery. And so it's great to do these things. And I absolutely loved like doing Hadrian's Wall, doing the marathon. But it's the journey of doing it that means more. And I cannot describe it, but the high I get, the natural high, being exposed to the kind of rawest elements, it's just God, it makes you feel alive. And it's that feeling I really cherish and I'm in search of all the time. I think it's like my drug, I suppose.
I think you've touched on two really interesting things there. And you and I share a lot in common about working. We'll touch on how you juggle work, but both of us work quite a lot with elite athletes. And I think that there's two things that you've really touched on, which I just want to delve a little bit deeper on. One is the journey that you went through in terms, and I remember Charlotte Hurst, the 11-year-old in the playground, super competitive. But you've turned that competition from an external type of competition to an internal competition, which is a really interesting journey that you've gone on. And it's something that I think a lot of people struggle to understand in terms of pushing yourself and competing against yourself. And the second thing I want to just delve deeper on, because it's something that I struggle to go through, which is the appreciation of the journey versus the focus on the destination. Because I'm assuming, and I've done this in some of my sort of ultra stuff, there's that moment in your head where you really start to question what you're doing, and it's why you're doing it. And it's not normally in the race itself. It's a lot of times it's in the training. So how do you remember that switch from being competitive against other people to being competitive against yourself? And secondly, how do you maintain that focus and that enjoyment on the journey?
So in answer to your first question, the switch, so it's happened organically. And there was not a light bulb moment where I thought, oh my God, I'm not competing against other athletes where I want to win. There was never that kind of, flick of a switch. However, I think through probably quite recently, through my marathon training last year, it got really tough. And you hit the nail on the head. It happened in the training. That's the bit that I didn't enjoy. I got to a point where I was like, I just don't know if I can do this. And that's when I was like, you almost give yourself a kick at the arse. You're like, what am I talking about? And then it becomes something, right, okay, it's a personal challenge. I'm going to take this on. I'm going to grab the bull by the head. And now it's time that I, better myself. And that's where the switch, I love the way you put it. You went from an external to internal. That's exactly what happened. But it just was an organic process. And looking back, I think that's when it happened. When I was doing triathlons in my 20s, I was fiercely competitive and it was all about, trying to win. Didn't happen particularly often, but I got a coach, took it seriously, wanted to, my technique. It was all about, doing better and getting better and winning more. And then I don't know if it would have happened anyway, because as we get older, or, your focus just shifts. But I don't like losing. And now it's not that I don't like failing, because I'm actually better at that, because that's how you learn and grow. But you have to get to that point. And then that's when you shift the goals a little bit, or shift, adapt what you're doing to suit the training plan or whatever to get you to your destination. So it's that part of the journey that is really, what's the word? That's the growing process. And that's what I now love and embrace. So, I think that answers your first question. There was never a specific moment. It was just sort of an organic process that I think happened through training for these longer runs and bigger challenges.
I've got an alternative thing for you based on what you just said, by the way.
Okay.
And I agree just from listening to what you said, because I think you've given the golden answer to everybody who struggles to stay committed to something or disciplined to something, be it in the outdoors, be it in sport, be it in life. And I just think you've hit the golden nugget, which is organic. But I think the moment that people move from a position of competing against themselves to a position of, competing against others to competing against themselves, is the moment when they see failure as the greatest opportunity to learn. And that's why I think you've hit the golden nugget. And I think that's that moment where because there's this whole train of thought at the moment about two types of mindsets, a fixed mindset and the growth mindset, and our ability to deal with failure. And it's like, I love the quote that says, you're not bad at something, you just haven't started something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really interesting. So what's been your relationship with failure?
So I've had a relationship with failure, and the point, and I never failed at anything. And you know, whether it be an exam at school or my driving test or anything that I did.
You passed first time?
I did pass first time, yeah. So
you still
I did, yeah.
20 odd years later.
Boom. But my first experience of failure was when my marriage didn't work. And it didn't work for any specific reason. There was nothing nasty that happened. It just didn't work. And I remember seeing, we both went for marriage counseling to try and make it work, because we're like, we've been married 2 years. What's going on? You know, it's like on paper, it's a match made in heaven. And I then went for some private therapy afterwards with a different, and she said, you know what? This is the first time you are encountering failure in inverted commas. She wasn't calling me a failure. She wasn't saying that I'd failed, but she's saying this is the way I was looking at it. And so my experience of failure up until my mid-20s was I never failed, and it was unacceptable to fail. So to suddenly then go through this life, you know, changing experience that, you know, you think your road's all mapped out, you're married, you're going to maybe have a family, but you're going to do all this stuff and, you know, happily ever after and all that, you know, it just didn't work. And then so suddenly I was like, oh my God, I'm a failure. I'm failing. But you know what? It was at that point that I started, you know, I was living for the day. I just took one day as it came, but I was making decisions for me and how I felt. And off the back of that, then this is kind of, I think this has got me to where I am now. And I'm okay with failure, because I know now that you only experience failure when you get into a position of being uncomfortable or you're challenging yourself. If you never get to that position, you're never going to grow or learn. So, and now I embrace it. I can take it. And that is my learning process with this kind of, and you know, not only the physical stuff, you know, probably the start of last year is when my business started to really take off as well. And you know, you just put yourself out there and you just got to do it. I
think it's really interesting, because people will listen to this and go, yeah, failure, but it doesn't make a difference how failure still bloody hurts. Failure is still bloody horrible. And we all experience failure. I think the difference is the choices that we make after failure it's like, if you fail an exam, do you say, well, that exam was too hard and I'm going to give up and I'm going to try something else? Or do you go, right, I didn't put the work in, or I need to do more effort? And I think that's the choices that we make after failure defines probably the next phase of our life. And I think that's just an interesting thing for people to think about. Especially like in the outdoors. If you think about the outdoors as well. But if you're in the outdoors and a piece of key equipment breaks, you have a choice to make. You can literally be an ostrich and go, shit, or I've got to give up. Or you can sit there and go, right, how can I make something work with what I have available to me? I presume with you as well, that's a little bit how you cope with the training. And let's talk about that, because you just mentioned your business. And the thing that's, I think, very inspiring for all the listeners is that you work full time and you got your own business. So tell us a little bit about your business. And then as we go through your business, I'm really intrigued about how a day in the life of Charlotte looks like, and how do you manage to run it was sub 3.5 marathon, wasn't it?
It was just over 3.5. Yeah, it was just over 3.5. Yeah.
Okay, so a bloody quick marathon time, plus the Hadrians Wall, plus some crazy stuff that we'll talk about you're about to do in the future. So tell us a bit about your business, and then tell us how you still look 25.
You're being way too kind. Right, so I'm a chiropractor, and I have a very busy human clinic that I do kind of probably 3 full days a week in there, and 2 late nights and evenings. I'm also a chiropractor for horses and dogs. So I spend a couple of days out on the road treating them, which is It's brilliant. I absolutely love it. So I've done a lot of investing in the human side of it, be it ongoing learning, buying some more equipment. My human side of things really focuses on the athlete, like you've already touched on. Everybody is welcome through my door, but I've got some more kit now that kind of focuses a little bit more on rehab and recovery, as well as like post-surgery, fractures, things like that, as well as the chiropractic. So it all just fits in really lovely. Very, very busy. Like I say, absolutely love it. And then, my horsey and dog days are almost like days off, because I get to go outside, enjoy the fresh air, sit in the car, drive around in some lovely spots. And I also, actually, I've got coming up in a couple of weeks, a weekend in the Isle of Man, working over there, because there's no horse chiropractor on the island. So I'm going over there 2 or 3 times a year. Before COVID, I was over in Ireland. I've been over to France to do a bit. So my work is amazing. It takes me everywhere. And I absolutely love it for that. Fitting it all in. So I live on my own with my 2 dogs. They're my children. I get up at crazy o'clock and I do all my training in the morning. So all my training's done by 6:30. And then I do my day's work. Sometimes that takes me till 8, 9 o'clock at night. Sometimes I finish at kind of 5 in the morning, 5 in the evening, 5 in the morning.
It feels like 5 in the morning sometimes.
I get up at 4 in the morning and I'm training by 4:30, 5. Yeah. So, but it means that I'm in bed like 8, 8:30. I just have to be.
Don't mock it. I'm the same. I love it. I'm get the book out up by 5:30.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, thank God. It's, I really like it because I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything at that time of night, but in the morning. So my phone is going quite often through the day. And at that time in the morning, nobody's up. I don't get disturbed at all. It is time for me. And I absolutely love it. So that's how I kind of get the training in. It was easy marathon training last year because it was in October, so it meant I had the summer. So I had the light mornings and the light nights. But I was only, aside from my other training, I was only doing 3 runs a week. I was doing 2 to start with 2 5K runs in the week and 1 longer one at the weekend. And then as we got closer, I did up my 5K runs to 10K runs. And then I ended up doing kind of like the 22 miles in training. And all I was focusing through that training was that I wanted to break 4 hours and I didn't really have a time. All my training was on my own, and here at home, it's lots of hills. And then I started to think, maybe I could, what's the 4-hour pace? And I can't remember off the top of my head what it was now. I listened to a few podcasts, some really good information. And then I did a half marathon sort of test run up and down the hills, and I was on target for probably about a 3:45, 3:50 type time. So I was quite happy with that. And then I got to London on the start line, all these people, it was amazing. First time I'd run with other people, and it was flat as a pancake. And I just had an absolute ball. And it was just brilliant. I checked my watch a couple of times, but all my splits were within 2 or 3 seconds of each other, my 5K splits. And it was just without even trying, I just went at one pace. My friend that came down, he was at various checkpoints with the diabetes as well and managing blood sugars and oh God, anyway, that's another probably whole other podcast. But he's like, there's no way you'll keep this up. Just watch what you're doing. And I was like, I know, I feel fine. And my last mile was my quickest without, I wasn't necessarily, I didn't hit a wall. It was just amazing. But going back, I was supposed to do I think it was like a 15-mile run. It wasn't that long in comparison, but I got to 6 miles. My blood sugars dropped out the bottom. And you think, I'll be able to walk home if nothing else. I couldn't. I sat down in the middle of the road. I cried. I was like, what am I doing? I rang Mum. She had to come pick me up. That was my lowest point. It was at that point that I was like, right, I need to sit down, pen and paper, work everything out. What am I doing wrong? My glycogen levels are totally depleted. My blood sugar levels, like I say, were through the floor. I couldn't get them up. I had gels, jelly babies, everything with me. Nothing was working. It was like pulling. So I totally reshifted, sorted out my nutrition. And that was what I needed, the wake-up call. And then after that, I started enjoying it. But I had to get to that point. Otherwise, I wouldn't have learned how to manage it better and be more successful. So just going back to the whole kind of failure thing.
But just on that one, because how did you wake up the next morning after a very traumatic experience? How did you wake up the next morning and when you felt ready again, put your trainers on and go back out again? Because a lot of people would look at that as going, your body's telling you that's enough. I've overdone it. But what went through your mind then?
So that run. So that run was actually on a Friday, and I was trying to do my long run on a Friday because I think I was tied up with something horsey going on at the weekend. So I couldn't do my long run on the Sunday. So I was trying to squeeze it in for one. So then I had the whole weekend to process it. So on the Friday afternoon, I was in bits, I was just upset with myself, disappointed, angry, really, really annoyed, frustrated. And then I kind of did my kind of horsey thing, which is probably exactly the right thing. You got me out, you got me away. I didn't even look at my trainers for 2 days. And then on the Sunday evening, I kind of got back and I was like, right, I've either got to do this or not do this. And there's no option of not doing it. So I've got to work out how I am going to do it. And it was literally, I sat down with a pen and paper and I planned out and I scheduled what I needed to do to get me to the start line in London on the 3rd of October. And it wasn't necessarily about doing so many miles and so many miles. It was just about, right, the night before I've got to do this so I can run 20 miles the day after. And you just have to be, really, really meticulous about it. And without, I wasn't overindulging in kind of science or getting to, nothing was complicated, but just with my health issues and stuff going on, I just had to be more organized. And that was all it was. So the next time I put on the trainers, it was a 5K run. The next time I put on the trainers, it was a 10K run. And then the next time I put on the trainers, it was, I think it was more like 20K or it might have been slightly more. And it was absolutely fine. And then I was like, right, we're going again. So had then I put on the trainers the first time and had another disastrous run, I don't know what would have happened. But just the process between the two runs, I think, and because I then started thinking about it and being sensible about it rather than just expecting my body to cope with what I was chucking at it.
Yeah, and I think what, again, you're articulating, and we haven't even touched on your horse career and that, but what you're articulating is, again, really important for anybody who's having a goal or setting a target in mind, be it a multi-day hike in the outdoors or something physical, which is to understand what you physically need to do by the end of it, but almost then forget about that, because it's not something that you're going to be able to do overnight. It's going to take and like you said, it's not about over-engineering it or complicating. It's just about breaking it down to those little small chunks that goes, right, where do I need to be by the end of week 1? Where do I need to be by the end of week 2? And that is I think it's such an important life lesson for people to think about as well.
Absolutely. And do you know what I said, all the time we talk about goal setting in clinic and stuff like that. And you break it down to, smaller steps and achievable and measurable. And all that applies to when you working out the journey towards the destination. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But like you said as well, it's not being blinkered by it. I think too many people get put off by goals because they're going, well, I need to now follow it. Well, sometimes I've done that with training where I've woken up one day and it's not like a key day for training and my body feels crap. And I know that if I go out and do something, I'm going to do damage. And I just go, sod it. I'll make it up. Every now and again, you're allowed to give your body a rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let's talk about it, because you touched on a little bit, obviously, with some of the health challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And the bit that I know is really important to you is nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And the nutrition, not only in terms of the training part of it, but you're on your feet, you're a chiro, you're running around, seeing patients. Do you call them patients or clients as a chiro?
Patients, I actually refer them to them as, yeah.
So you're seeing patients probably most of the time back to back, which means eating, drinking, all that kind of stuff, the challenge, which a lot of us have in our lives. We are. So how do you cope with nutrition? How do you cope with obviously the diabetes and managing that? How do you change your nutrition around activities and events that you're doing, say Hadrian's Wall, and other stuff that I'm going to persuade you to do?
And again, this has been another organic kind of growth process for me. So I recently discovered within the last, probably about 12 months ago, that I've been gluten intolerant all my life, which has probably led to being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 28. And also I've got rheumatoid arthritis. So without medication at the moment, I can't walk, let alone run. But the medication I'm on is brilliant. So anyway, so I've totally cleared gluten out, and I'm now a very, very big advocate I was always very kind of anti-processed food and ready-made meals and stuff. I know we all get caught out every now and then, and it's fine to do that as a one-off. It's the ongoing eating processed food that is so damaging to our health. So for me, nutrition-wise, I prepare all my food. I'm mad about soups and salads and fish and meat. And also now I've got my slow cooker. So for the winter, it's fab. I just chuck something on overnight, and then I've got a nice, and I take that to work with me. So in between patients, that's chucked in the microwave to heat up or cold or whatever. Water, I drink a lot of water. I tend to drink most of my water in the mornings, and after training, through training, and then green teas and things like that. But but don't get me wrong, I like a glass of wine. I like to, I crave sugar, I like a good dessert. And I used to starve myself of all of that, but it's not sustainable. And so now, I'll have a bit of dark chocolate. I try and keep it as close to what we should be doing. But, I've just got back from 4 days in the Alps, and I might have drunk a little bit more than I probably would do normally. And but I stayed off the gluten. And for me, that's the challenge. So it's great. So I'm coming off some of the meds I'm on for the rheumatoid arthritis, which is a real big indicator that it's working. And so far, so good. So working with a functional health specialist for all of that. So nutrition, I try and keep it, as, I don't want to say natural as possible, but, fresh fruit, fresh veg, meat and fish. And then with Hadrian's Wall, I just shifted that a little bit. So just a few more carbs, because of being able to sort of do 3 days on the trot like that. And like you said, the terrain and it was quite hilly and quite exposed, and a headwind from start to finish, which I knew because we were going east to west, not west to east, which you should have done. But anyway.
Schoolboy planning, that is.
Oh my God. And from the start to the end was this incessant headwind. But anyway, adds to the challenge. So, so I did up the carbs for that. But lots of electrolytes.
You've mentioned a couple of times, and a bizarre question to ask a chiro, but if you take your chiro hat off for 2 seconds and you put your outdoor, your athlete hat on, you've mentioned it in terms of your Hadrian's Wall run. You've mentioned it in a few times. What is your relationship and your views on expertise and utilizing expertise? So you've talked in terms of training, preparation, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. What's your thoughts on that?
As in professionals getting help, do you mean? Yeah. We can't all be experts at everything. And there are definite experts in those fields. I think we'll probably come on to my next challenge, but there's no way I'm going to be able to do that on my own. And so I've got help. So last year I got help from a functional health specialist, and he has been amazing. And really, I got in contact with him because I wanted to know, was I taking the right supplements, or was I taking enough of the right supplements, or, what supplements and where should I get them? It's such a minefield. And that has been a great learning experience. Nutritionists, so with the diabetes, I have a couple of really good nutritionists that I talk to regularly, and depending on, what goals I've got coming up, they kind of help me in regards to that. I'm going to have to take on a trainer of some description or coach for this, what's going on next year. We're all experts in different fields, and I fully appreciate that. I don't know enough about, helping myself. And that's why I really enjoy the learning as well. And so, I put a lot of education on social media for my patients and followers. And some of it's really boring. Some of it, I hope, plants a seed in someone's head. I don't pretend to know it all, but if I can just start a conversation about some of it, then, if someone doesn't know where to start, I can put them in the right direction. So sorry, I just put the chiropractic hat back on. But I'm a big believer that we all need help from the different experts in the different fields. We can't do it all ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because I think a lot of people, there's obviously the monetary part of it in terms of being able to afford all this support, but also I think there's an arrogance of it as well about I know, or the biggest danger at the moment, which is Google will tell me the answer, which is not always very accurate, especially what you mentioned there, supplements, because I've been doing lots of research now for my knee, and literally there's like a million different pieces of advice out there about what you should do to recover. How, with your chiro hat on as well, like what would be your tips to the listeners now who are wanting to do some research on themselves and find out a little bit, but also are looking to find the right person to work with, pick the right person? What would you say they should be looking for?
Gosh, that's a really good question. And do you know what? There's not an easy answer, because Google's amazing for lots of different reasons, but it's also can be the worst enemy, because you can find anything you want to find on Google. And if you want to be a believer in anything, if you're swinging towards a certain way, you will find that bit of carrot that's dangled there to make you, it's just, there is so much information and there's so much wrong information on there. What I say to a lot of people, for example, in the kind of health space, for example, joint pain, post-surgery, post-injury, where people need help, as far as that's concerned in the physical sense, I tend to get people, I just say, look, message me, call me, let's talk about the problem, and then I can point you or help point you in the right direction, whether it be physio or someone in your area, or do you know what, you actually need to go back to the doctor, or maybe you should consider getting a scan on it before we go any further. Depends on the problem. So it's very difficult. And, there's a lot of professionals out there that go, yeah, I can fix you, come in. And we, it's not the case. It's really not the case. So I really like being part of a team of healthcare providers. And I'm not necessarily part of a team, but I'm hopefully someone in that system that can then, I refer patients privately to orthopedic consultants, for example, or say, look, this isn't me, but I think you should try this person. Or, I'm going to write to your GP, say that you've seen me and it's not helping, because sometimes we can try, give it 2 or 3 treatments. I'm here for the patient. I want the best possible outcome. And especially with athletes and performance, and when, whether it be amateur athletes or professionals, it makes no difference. Everyone, we all want to be at our best. And it's about people knowing what their options are, because that's the hardest thing. It doesn't matter what country they're in or where they are in the world. It's just knowing, what options have you got? And sometimes when you spell it out, we could do this, or we could do this, or you could try that. Why don't we do this first? And then you call me in a week and tell me how you got on, or, let me put you in touch with someone to try, and then once people have that path, it just takes out that, that element of question mark a little bit, and it gives people a bit more of a sense of direction, and then where they can go from there. But it's the not knowing is the hardest part. And there's just not one hard and fast rule to say, yeah, go there and try that. A, everybody's different, and B, it's different from area to area anyway. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And yeah, we never know what is the right one to do. I think it's a challenge one. But let's now look into the future a little bit. And I really want you to tell the story of how you went about signing this up, because I think this is really entertaining. But in May, you're going to come out to Spain and do some, while I cycle, you are going to keep my sister company for a little bit, and then you're going to get out and you're going to start running. Charlotte, why do you need to start running such long distances?
Oh my goodness. So in a mad moment, I mean, so let's go back a little bit. First of all, I've been obsessed with this race for 15 years, and I have always thought there's no way I'd ever be able to do it. So I went to the Running Expo, which is held at the NEC in Birmingham in the UK here a couple of weeks ago, and got talking to this really, really inspirational chap who is incredible. I'm just reading his book. He was selling me his book, telling me all about it. He has run the Marathon des Sables 5 times, having been diagnosed with terminal prostate cancer, and he's still got prostate cancer. And this guy is amazing. So we got talking, and I said, oh, I'm just about to enter the half version in Peru in December this year. And he said, stop, don't do it. Don't waste your money. Just do the full one. And I said, there's no way I'll be able to do the full one. And he said, Charlotte, if I can do the full one, you can. So I left.
Ultimate sales pitch.
Oh my God. That's all I need. Right. So I got home.
He saw you coming a mile off.
He definitely did. Got home from this running expo, literally signed up the minute I got home, entered the Marathon des Sables for 2023. So that will be April, end of April, I think, next year, which is 250 kilometers across the Sahara Desert in 5 days in 45-degree heat, about carrying everything you need on your back for the 5 days. Yeah, imagine getting to the end of that.
A friend of mine's done it, and it's tough, eh? Jeepers, it is. So what's the journey going to look like?
So I woke up the next morning feeling quite ill that I'd done this, but then, gosh, the more you talk to people about it, and the more, so I put something on Facebook or LinkedIn saying, oh my God, I've just signed up to this, what am I thinking, type thing. And the amount of people, a lot of people just said, oh my God, you're nuts. But people contacted me. So the first type 1 diabetic guy to do it contacted me and said, Charlotte, if you need any help, I'm here. Everyone's come out of the woodwork. There's colleagues that I've trained with at chiropractic school that have done it and said, like, here's my kit list. For example, I've got them from someone sent me over their kit list for what they took, and they did it in 2014. Like, it's just incredible. And do you know what? It's a real sense of community. So, and this goes back to the whole competitive thing. You are competitive against yourself and completing the challenge. It's not necessarily about winning unless you're like super elite, which it won't be. So the journey there is going to be brilliant fun. So I'm going to come out and run a couple of your bike stages, I think. Yeah. And see you guys and catch up with Kat, and like training in the Pyrenees would be a great build up to it. So, and in the heat as well. So that will be really good. I'd like to get a marathon in. That will be a good kind of stepping stone as well. And then there's a couple of kind of multi-stage type ultras that I need to think about doing. Add to that, I need to do some heat acclimatization. I've had a couple of suggestions, like put a heater, an electric fan in a small room for the day on, get togged up, and then do an hour of step-ups in the evening after work, things like that. So it's all doable. It's all doable, I think. And I actually, do you know what I can't say? The stories of kind of sharing your tent with 6 other people, the camaraderie, the sense of family, the support that you get from other people, like it just gives me goosebumps thinking about it now, and I've not experienced anything like it. So I think it would be out of this world. My only concern is that I might get addicted to that feeling. I can see myself getting addicted to that feeling. And like my parents have said, please don't do it. I think that they're just sick of getting worried about me, which I don't blame them. No one else gets it. No one else gets it. So, sorry, that's my blood sugars. Yeah, it's a hard one to explain, but it's huge. It's massive. It really without me knowing, it's been on my bucket list in a way that I just never thought I'd be able to do it. Yet here I am considering doing it. I'm going to raise some money as well. It's all going to be, for worthwhile cause, as well as, again, learning about myself. My God, I will learn so much. I can't wait.
I think, again, there's a couple of things that I think a lot of people can take out what you've just said, and not in terms of what you're doing, because there are very few people on this earth who have been dropped at birth as many times as you have, and therefore do something as stupid as this. But it's more the fact that how often do we see something that we really want to do, and then we get in our heads for all the reasons why we can't do it, and we never actually pull the trigger. But there was a million reasons why you shouldn't sign up for it, probably health-wise, work-wise, everything. But like you said, you got back, and the very next day you just took action straight away. So I think the first thing that a lot of people can take out of this is just, if it feels right, just take action straight away. The longer you put off, the harder it becomes to commit to something. And then the second thing you said, which is really cool, which is that you're brave enough to put out what you're doing to friends and family, which does position you in a bit of a weird space in terms of, A, you can't pull out now, but B, you're being very comfortable with whatever the outcome is. And now you've experienced that community element. And I think a lot of people get scared of other people's opinions, or they get scared of failure, therefore don't actually do it. So how did it feel when you actually pulled? I know you said you felt sick, but that moment, there must have been moments in that mind which said, don't you bloody do it. Don't be so stupid. So how did you overcome those? And then secondly, what do you think about the power of community?
So it's way too easy to say no. And that goes in, like what you were just saying, in so many things in life. Like, I'm not particularly good at going out and being sociable necessarily. It's, I have connections, and I, family and friends and all the rest of it. That's where I'm bad at saying no, because I just like, cozying up on the sofa with the dogs and, chilling for the probably 1 hour that I've got to chill. But when it comes to challenges like that, it doesn't really enter my head not to do it. I know it's going to be tough, and I know it's difficult, but I almost, in a very odd way, relish that part of it. As in, because I've not done it before, so I might be being really naive about this, but like pushing myself that extra bit. When I did the London Marathon, I didn't know what happened after 22 miles and I was running the London Marathon, because that's the longest I'd run in a training run. I was like, am I going to hit a wall? I have no idea. And I really enjoyed those last 4 miles because it was a new learning experience. And I sort of think that that's what will be the case to a degree. Don't get me wrong, I'm going to be red raw with blisters, probably heat stroke. And the other thing that's just dawned on me, I have a really over the top fear of snakes, and I didn't even enter my head about snakes in the desert. So I've just discovered that. So I might have to go and get some therapy. That's actually what's worrying me more than anything at the moment. What was the second part of your question? Sorry. Oh, community. Yeah.
I feel like talking about snakes now. Just see how that reaction would...
So I can't even see a picture of a snake in a book, on Facebook, let alone on a film. I've seen a couple in real life, and I've either been sick or fainted. Like, I just, even talking about it is making me a little bit uncomfortable. Anyway, let's go to the community, sense of community. It's really important. So I come from a big family, 3 sisters. We're a very, very close family. And although over years gone by, we've kind of I lived in Ireland for 6 years, and before that, France in a couple of years, and Emma's lived in Ireland, and, we've been a little bit all over the shop. We're now all very close locally. And we all see each other regularly. And for me, that's my day-to-day community. I have a work community. My patients are my community, and I have a fabulous time helping them. And they enjoy coming to me for treatments. They know that they can text me for advice in between. It's a real sense of kind of toing and froing of conversation and stuff like that. So there's that community. And then there's the whole challenge community, just reading these ultra runs and how you make lifelong friends and you're there for each other. And God, it sounds amazing. And I can't wait to become part of that. I almost crave it. Yeah. Really looking forward to that. So, and I think when you get onto these sort of multi-day ultra type events and the lead up to the NDS, I think that's where you start meeting people that are going to be doing the NDS. And reading this chap's book, Kevin Webber is the guy that I spoke to at the expo. You very, very quickly build friendships and lifelong friendships. And that's something that, really excites me.
Yeah, I think there's something special. If I look at a lot of my closest friendships and stuff, it has been forged in situations, scenarios, or experiences that have been something where you can't fake it. It's something where the true mark comes out, the true person comes out. There is no hiding space, because one of my closest mates, him and I did a hike it's called the Wild Coast down here in South Africa, and it is wild, it is rugged. The amount of shipwrecks along that coast. And then we were carrying about a backpack, about 20-25 kilos, and we got lost. We got really, really lost. And we ended up hiking 55 kilometers in one day.
My God.
And it was the moment in that hike where the weather was crap. We stupidly didn't have the right equipment for that, because we weren't supposed to do this thing. It was a whole other story. But he got a bit delirious and he started to get a bit of hypothermia. And he got so delirious that his sense of direction completely went. He had no idea where he was. And I had to go to him and I had to say to him, "Do you trust me?" And he was like, "Yes, I will get you out of here, but just stop arguing with me. If you trust me, I've got your back." And we got our way out of it. And I think those friendships and that stuff is it's an amazing part of the outdoors. It's an amazing part of sport, of ultra stuff, endurance stuff.
It's real, isn't it?
And it's even that wink on people on a trail, isn't it? When you see someone in the outdoors and you just give them that little nod. It's like, I love the outdoor nod. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. I am, even though I've got a million more things I want to ask you. A, your blood sugars have just gone off, so I want to make sure you do your blood sugars.
No, we're fine.
B,
we're fine.
You've probably got training at 4:00 in the morning.
Yes, back on it.
Back on it. So what I'm going to do is, obviously down below in the description, I'm going to put the links to, because I think there's going to be a lot of people, Charlotte, who'll be interested in understanding a little bit more about your philosophies in Cairo, and so they can find you there. I've got a feeling, and I'm pretty sure, because I know you did this for Hadrian's Wall and the London Marathon, that you'll be sharing some of your journey and your training. And I think there's a lot of people out there who are going to look at what you're doing and how you're juggling multiple things and be quite inspired and look to follow your journey. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be people there who are going to want to sponsor some of those awesome charities that you're going to be. Have you identified some that you're doing yet for?
So I've put some feelers out. Diabetes UK is obviously probably number one. I have contacted them. I'm just waiting for them to come back to me on sort of the best ways of going about it. And I'm just sort of saying if, they have any kind of professionals they could help me with, like nutritionists and, if they've had people doing this before, which I'm sure they have. So yeah, I'm just waiting for them to come back to me. A couple of other charities that I might do it for. One might be mental health as well. So that's a big thing. And I think, going back to why we do all this stuff and being outdoors, and for me, it's the mental health aspect of it. And that's why I train and why I do all this stuff, because I feel great on it. And it's not necessarily the physical stuff. Yes, that's a close second. But for me, mental, I've been in the low spots and probably acknowledge that I have an element of depression, or certainly that way inclined at times. And I think, a lot of us do anyway. But being outdoors and being in the elements, whatever they're doing, whether the sun is shining or it's horizontal rain, my God, do you feel alive when you're out in it? And that's what I'm addicted to. That's my addiction. So,
very healthy addiction to have.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
It is an incredible experience, that outdoor stuff. I remember sitting on a bridge once, and how you talk about those moments in time where you look at it and you go, I remember sitting on the bridge up in the Drakensberg Mountains and just watching water go past, and I was going, I remember this was ago. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember sitting there going, Mark, why are you always in such a rush? And it was, and I think that's the power of the outdoors. So
brilliant.
We'll put the links in there below. So if anyone wants to sponsor Charlotte on her batshit crazy idea, then they can reach out and follow you. But firstly, thank you very much for being really cool, active member of the We Get Outdoors crew. Thank you for being an inspiration to everybody who is wanting to do something. You've given us some great insights in terms of how to stop procrastinating, how to actually move, how to revisit their relationship with failure, and actually getting out there and taking the bull by its horns and driving forward. So thank you for being inspiration to lots and lots of people. I wish you lots of luck as you train, and more importantly, I wish you a lot of luck trying to keep up with me on my bike.
Mark, I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me on. All your really kind words. It's great to connect again, and really looking forward to following your bike ride. I love the group. It's great. It's great to have a group like this to be a member of. And I enjoy looking at the posts every day. So thank you very much.